The Awakening of the Elorian Empire. Admiral Varek stood at the observation deck of the flagship Celestial Dawn, gazing out into the vastness of space. The stars twinkled like distant memories against the backdrop of the infinite cosmos. His sleek silver skin shimmered under the soft glow of the ship's control panels, reflecting his deep contemplation. For centuries, the Elorian Empire had expanded its reach across galaxies, conquering worlds and assimilating civilizations into their vast domain. Yet today, a report about a small blue planet known as Earth lay before him on the holoscreen, an insignificant dot in the grand scheme of the universe. "Admiral," Officer Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts as she entered the chamber. Her violet eyes glowed with curiosity and urgency. "Have you reviewed the latest intelligence on Earth? It's marked as a priority." Varek turned his attention to the holoscreen displaying images of Earth, lush landscapes and sprawling cities that seemed almost idyllic. "What makes this world so important?" he asked skeptically, his mandibles clicking in annoyance. "They haven't even reached beyond their moon." Lyra hesitated before responding, her fingers dancing over her console to pull up additional data. "Sir, it's not their technology that concerns us, it's their history." The screen flickered to life with images depicting wars, destruction, and chaos throughout human history. Varek's interest peaked as he observed the footage, humans fighting amongst themselves with weapons that ranged from crude tools to advanced firearms. "They seem primitive," he remarked dismissively. "That's just it," Lyra continued earnestly. "Despite their primitive beginnings, they've shown an alarming capacity for violence and innovation. They've fought 2 global wars in less than a century and have developed weapons that can annihilate entire cities." Commander Jax entered just as Lyra finished her explanation, his expression serious as he approached Varek. "Admiral, I've run simulations based on our previous encounters with other species. If we were to engage with Earth based on our standard tactics." Varek raised a brow as Jax hesitated for dramatic effect. "What are you trying to say?" "The simulations indicate that traditional invasion strategies would fail spectacularly," Jax said gravely. "Humans are unpredictable, they adapt quickly to threats and often turn their limitations into strengths." Varek leaned back in his chair, contemplating this new information. "So you're saying they could be more dangerous than we initially thought?" "Yes," Lyra interjected. "Their lack of unity may actually work in their favor, they fight individually but coordinate when threatened collectively." The Admiral's scales shifted colors, first a deep blue of contemplation before flashing red with irritation at being caught off guard by such a seemingly insignificant planet. "Prepare a message for the High Council," he commanded sharply. "Mark this planet as high priority for further observation." As Lyra began typing out the message, Varek couldn't shake off an unsettling feeling that had begun to creep into his mind, a sense that perhaps underestimating humanity could lead to dire consequences. "Admiral," Lyra said suddenly, pulling up another section of data on her screen. "You should see this." She gestured toward an image depicting human ingenuity, their ability to transform everyday objects into weapons during times of war. Varek watched in disbelief as she highlighted various historical events where humans had used creativity in combat, turning bats into bombers during World War II or using everyday tools in ingenious ways to gain advantages over their enemies. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath but couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for their resourcefulness. "Sir," Jax spoke up again, breaking Varek from his reverie. "If we're going to understand these humans better, we need more than just reports, we need first-hand reconnaissance." Varek considered this before nodding slowly. "Very well, prepare a scout ship for immediate departure to Earth." As preparations began aboard Celestial Dawn, Varek felt a mix of anticipation and dread at what lay ahead, an encounter with a species whose unpredictability could either lead to their downfall or reveal new opportunities for conquest. With plans set in motion and curiosity ignited within him about this seemingly inconsequential planet called Earth, Admiral Varek was determined to uncover what lay beneath its surface, a truth that might very well change everything for the Elorian Empire. The first encounter. Captain Phoenix stood at the helm of the Shadow Whisper, the Narian Empire's most advanced stealth ship, as it glided through the void towards Earth. Her 4 cybernetic eyes scanned the myriad of readings on her console, each one confirming their approach to the primitive planet. The ship was nearly silent, its quantum cloaking field rendering it invisible to any known detection systems. Yet, a sense of unease crept over her as they neared their target. "Admiral Cross thinks this will be a simple observation mission," Phoenix mused aloud, her voice steady but laced with skepticism. "But something tells me these humans are more than they appear." "Captain, we are approaching the outer edges of Earth's detection grid," reported her first officer, Lieutenant Rian. His voice was calm, but his cybernetic enhancements flickered with data streams, indicating a level of tension beneath the surface. "Stealth systems engaged," Phoenix commanded, her fingers deftly adjusting controls. "Remember, these humans barely have satellite technology. We should be undetectable." As they neared the planet's atmosphere, the ship's sensors began picking up unusual frequencies, signals that seemed to bounce off their hull. "Captain," Rian said hesitantly, "we're detecting some kind of crude but effective detection method. They're using radio waves." Phoenix frowned. "That's absurd. Their technology is centuries behind ours. How could they possibly detect us?" Before Rian could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Multiple signals detected. They're launching aircraft," he exclaimed. "Activate secondary stealth measures." Phoenix ordered, her heart racing. She had trained for countless missions, but nothing could prepare her for the realization that Earth was not as defenseless as they had assumed. The Shadow Whisper shuddered as human fighter jets scrambled from various locations, converging on their position with alarming speed. Phoenix watched in disbelief as dozens of aircraft filled the holographic display before her. "Sir," Rian said urgently, "they're coordinating their response through something called NORAD. Are you telling me they have a unified military response?" Phoenix asked incredulously. "Yes, Captain. Their response time is incredible." Phoenix's mind raced as she considered their options. "We need to evade them, now. Execute evasive maneuvers." As Rian initiated evasive patterns, Phoenix felt a rush of adrenaline course through her veins. The human jets were surprisingly agile, they adapted to their movements in real time, predicting their next maneuvers with uncanny precision. "Captain," Rian shouted over the din of alarms, "they're broadcasting demands for identification in over 200 languages." "How thoughtful of them," she replied dryly, frustration mounting as she realized how well coordinated their response was. Suddenly, a new wave of panic washed over them as another alarm blared. "They've locked onto us with some kind of magnetic pulse weapon," Rian shouted. "Prepare for emergency protocols." Phoenix barked just as the ship jolted violently under the impact of a pulse weapon that sent systems spiraling into chaos. "Systems are failing," Rian cried out as lights flickered and alarms blared louder than ever. Phoenix gritted her teeth and fought against the rising tide of panic within her. "Get us out of here. Activate emergency cloaking." But it was too late. The Shadow Whisper was caught in a trap laid by a species that had once seemed so primitive and uncoordinated. As the ship's systems failed one by one, Phoenix felt a sinking realization settle in. These humans had developed countermeasures against advanced alien technology before even encountering it, a feat that defied all logic and expectation. In an instant, their communications went dark, they were cut off from command and left vulnerable in hostile territory. Meanwhile, back at the Narian Command Center aboard Star Destroyer Supreme, Admiral Cross paced anxiously as he awaited news from Captain Phoenix. The holographic display flickered with images of Earth rotating slowly, a planet that now seemed far more dangerous than he had anticipated. "Sir," Blakechen entered with urgency etched across his features, his cybernetic eye whirring as it processed incoming data streams. We've lost contact with the Shadow Whisper. Kraz felt his scales shift colors rapidly, first red with anger and then blue with concern. What happened? Did she report any findings? No, sir, Blake replied grimly. But preliminary data suggests that Earth's military capabilities are far beyond what we anticipated. Kraz clenched his mandibles in frustration. How can this be? They haven't even established colonies beyond their moon. Blake pulled up additional data on the holoscreen displaying human warfare throughout history, images of destruction and resilience flashing before them like a chaotic tapestry woven from bloodshed and innovation. Admiral, Blake continued carefully, the humans have an uncanny ability to adapt to threats and innovate under pressure. Kraz stared at the screen in disbelief as Blake highlighted various historical events where humans had turned ordinary objects into weapons, bats strapped with explosives during World War II or concrete tanks used when metal was scarce. This is absurd, Kraz muttered under his breath but couldn't deny the evidence before him. They've fought 2 planetary wars without even proper space travel. Yes, sir, Blake affirmed solemnly. And they continue to innovate even when faced with overwhelming odds. Kraz sank into his hover chair, overwhelmed by a sense of dread that had begun to settle deep within him, a feeling he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. Send another message to the High Council, he commanded slowly. Mark this planet as high priority for further observation. As Blake prepared to send the message, Kraz couldn't shake off an unsettling thought. Perhaps these humans were not just primitive beings after all, they were unpredictable and dangerous in ways he had never encountered before. Back aboard Shadow Whisper, Captain Phoenix struggled to regain control amidst failing systems and alarms blaring incessantly around her. The realization that they had underestimated Earth weighed heavily on her mind as she fought against despair. Rian, she shouted over the chaos. Can we restore communication? I'm trying, he yelled back desperately as sparks flew from damaged consoles around them. Just then, another jolt rocked the ship violently, they were losing altitude fast. Phoenix gripped her console tightly to steady herself against the force of gravity pulling them down toward Earth's atmosphere. We need to eject, she shouted decisively. Prepare escape pods. As crew members scrambled to follow orders amidst chaos and confusion, Phoenix felt a surge of determination rise within her. This wasn't just about survival, it was about understanding what lay ahead for both their species. With one last glance at Earth through their viewport, a blue-green orb teeming with life, she knew that this encounter would change everything for both sides involved. As they prepared for escape amid disarray and uncertainty, Captain Phoenix realized that this mission was no longer just an observation. It was now a fight for survival against a species whose unpredictability could very well spell doom for even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The gathering storm. General Corrin stood at the head of the Elorian High Council, his sharp features illuminated by the holographic display that floated above the table. The council chamber was a vast space, filled with representatives from various sectors of the Empire, each one eager to discuss the implications of the recent intelligence gathered on Earth. Corrin's silver skin shimmered under the ambient lighting, but his expression was grave as he prepared to address his fellow leaders. Esteemed members of the council, he began, his voice resonating with authority. We are gathered here today to discuss a matter of utmost importance regarding a planet known as Earth. The holographic display flickered to life, showcasing images of Earth alongside data points that highlighted its military history and technological advancements. Murmurs rippled through the council as they absorbed the information. Admiral Kraz has reported that our most advanced stealth ship, the Shadow Whisper, was captured by humans using technology that should be centuries behind ours, Corrin continued, his tone serious. This incident has raised significant concerns about their capabilities. Commander Talia, a fierce warrior with a reputation for her tactical brilliance, leaned forward in her seat. General, are we truly to believe that these primitives have developed countermeasures against our technology? It seems unfathomable. Corrin nodded solemnly. It is indeed troubling. They have shown an alarming ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. Historical records indicate that they have fought 2 global wars within a span of 3 decades without even having proper space travel at the time. The council members exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. One representative, a tall figure named Zarek, spoke up. But surely their lack of unity makes them an easy target? We could exploit their divisions. Ah, but therein lies the paradox, Corrin replied, raising a finger for emphasis. Their disunity may actually work in their favor. In simulations we've run, invading Earth would require us to engage in hundreds of battles simultaneously against varied strategies and tactics. It's not as simple as it appears. The council fell silent as they processed this information. Corrin took a deep breath before continuing. We must also consider their history of turning adversity into opportunity. They have repeatedly transformed their limitations into strengths, developing weapons from everyday objects and employing unconventional tactics that defy logic. Talia's brow furrowed as she considered this new perspective. So what do you propose we do? We cannot simply ignore this threat. Corrin gestured for the holodisplay to show more data on Earth's military innovations. We need to gather more intelligence before making any decisions. I propose we send additional reconnaissance teams to observe their military exercises and technological advancements. Another council member, an elder named Varek, interjected with a skeptical tone. And if they detect us again? We cannot afford another embarrassment like the Shadow Whisper incident. True, Corrin acknowledged, but we must also understand that knowledge is power. If we can learn how they think and operate in combat situations, we might find ways to counteract their unpredictability. As discussions continued around the table, Corrin felt a growing sense of urgency. The Elorian Empire had faced many challenges in its long history, but this was unlike anything they had encountered before, a species capable of imagining threats that didn't exist yet and building defenses against them for fun. Meanwhile, back on Earth, General Carter sat in his war room surrounded by maps and screens displaying real-time military data. The recent increase in aerial activity had sparked concern among human leaders about potential extraterrestrial threats. Gentlemen, Carter began, addressing his top advisors with a steely gaze. We've detected unusual signals coming from space, signals that suggest we may not be alone in this universe after all. Colonel Hayes leaned forward intently. Sir, are you suggesting we might be facing an alien invasion? Carter nodded gravely. It's possible. Our radar systems picked up unidentified vessels entering our atmosphere just days ago. We need to prepare for any potential conflict. The room buzzed with activity as advisors scrambled to assess their options. Carter knew that humanity's history had been marked by conflict and resilience. They had faced down threats both foreign and domestic time and again. Let's not forget, Carter continued, we've developed advanced technologies over the years, drones equipped with AI capabilities and missile systems designed for rapid response. If these aliens are indeed hostile, we need to be ready. As plans were laid out for increased surveillance and military readiness, Carter couldn't shake off a feeling of unease about what lay ahead. Humanity had always thrived on innovation born from necessity. Now they were faced with an unknown adversary that might very well challenge everything they thought they knew about warfare. Back in the Elorian High Council chamber, Corrin concluded his address with a sense of resolve. We must act swiftly and decisively. Our very existence may depend on it. The council members nodded in agreement as discussions turned towards potential strategies for gathering intelligence without provoking further conflict. Let us not underestimate these humans, Corrin warned once more before dismissing the meeting. They may appear primitive on the surface, but beneath lies an unpredictable force capable of remarkable ingenuity. As he left the chamber, Corrin felt a weight settle on his shoulders, a burden shared by every leader who understood that underestimating an enemy could lead to catastrophic consequences. In the days that followed, both sides prepared for what was shaping up to be an unprecedented encounter between two civilizations, one steeped in tradition and conquest and another defined by resilience and innovation. As tensions escalated across galaxies and whispers of war echoed through command centers on both sides, General Corrin and General Carter found themselves at the precipice of an inevitable clash, one that would determine not only their fates but also shape the course of history for generations to come. The Battle of Wits. The tension in the command center of the Narian flagship Star Destroyer Supreme was palpable as Admiral Cross processed the latest intelligence on Earth. The holographic display flickered with images of human military history, showcasing their remarkable adaptability and unexpected ingenuity. It was a stark reminder of how drastically underestimated they had been. "Lieutenant Nova," Cross called out, his voice steady despite the chaos that had unfolded with the Shadow Whisper. "What have you gathered about their military capabilities?" Nova Bry stood at her console, her cybernetic implants glowing with data streams. "Admiral, my research has revealed some astonishing facts about human warfare. They are not just survivors, they are innovators. Every time they face a new threat, they find ways to turn adversity into opportunity." Cross leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on. Take their 2 world wars as prime examples," Nova explained, pulling up a timeline on the holoscreen. "During World War I, they developed trench warfare strategies that changed combat dynamics forever. By World War II, they were innovating at an unprecedented pace, creating tanks out of concrete when metal was scarce and even using bats to deliver explosives." Krause's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Bats? As weapons?" "Yes, sir," Nova confirmed with a nod. "They called it Project X-ray. They attached small explosives to bats and released them over enemy territory. It was so effective that it was ultimately deemed too destructive to continue." Krause rubbed his temples in frustration. "This is absurd. How can a species so seemingly primitive be capable of such complex strategies?" "Because they think outside the box," Nova replied earnestly. "They don't just react to threats, they anticipate them and prepare accordingly. For instance, when faced with aerial attacks during World War II, they didn't merely improve their anti-aircraft weaponry, they revolutionized aviation itself." Krause's scales shifted colors as he processed this information. "So you're telling me that while we've been focused on traditional warfare strategies, these humans have been redefining what it means to fight?" "Exactly," Nova affirmed. "They have an innate ability to adapt and innovate in ways that defy logic. Their history is filled with examples of turning mundane objects into weapons, like using toilet plungers to attack battleships successfully." "Enough," Krause interrupted, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer absurdity of it all. "What does this mean for us? How do we counteract this unpredictability?" Nova hesitated before responding, her expression serious. "We need to change our approach entirely, Admiral. Instead of relying solely on our advanced technology and traditional tactics, we must consider unconventional strategies that account for human creativity." Krause nodded slowly, contemplating her words. "So we need to prepare for every possible scenario and expect the unexpected." "Yes, sir," Nova replied firmly. "We should also consider forming alliances with other species who may have encountered Earth before us, gather intelligence from their experiences." As discussions continued around the command center, Krause felt a growing sense of urgency to reassess their strategies against humanity. The more he learned about Earth's inhabitants, the more he realized that underestimating them could lead to disastrous consequences. Meanwhile, in a secure bunker deep within a military base on Earth, General Carter convened a meeting with his top advisors to discuss the potential alien threat that had emerged. "Gentlemen," Carter began, his tone grave as he surveyed the room filled with military leaders and intelligence analysts. "We've received reports indicating that an advanced alien species is observing us closely, possibly preparing for an invasion." Colonel Hayes leaned forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "Sir, do we have any idea what kind of technology they possess?" Our recent encounter suggests they may be far more advanced than we initially thought. Carter nodded solemnly. Indeed. We've detected advanced stealth ships and weaponry capable of disabling our aircraft with ease. He paused for effect before continuing. But we cannot let fear dictate our response. Instead, we must prepare ourselves for every possible scenario. Captain Rena chimed in from the back of the room, her voice steady and resolute. A new understanding. In the dimly lit command center of the Star Destroyer Supreme, Admiral Cross sat in his hover chair, his scales shifting through shades of frustration and disbelief. The recent encounter with Earth had shattered his assumptions about this seemingly primitive planet. Now, as he awaited Lieutenant Nova Bry's report, he felt a mix of anxiety and curiosity about what further revelations awaited him. The door slid open, and Nova entered, her cybernetic implants flickering with data streams. "Admiral," she began, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. "I've compiled my findings regarding Earth's military history and their astonishing adaptability. Please tell me you have something that can help us understand these humans better," Cross replied, leaning forward in anticipation. Nova activated the holoscreen, displaying a timeline filled with images of human conflicts and innovations. "What I've discovered is both fascinating and alarming. Humans have an uncanny ability to turn adversity into opportunity. They don't just adapt, they innovate in ways that defy logic." Cross studied the images closely as Nova continued. For instance, during World War II, when they faced a shortage of metal for tanks, they constructed concrete tanks that served as mobile fortifications. When they needed to bomb enemy positions but lacked aircraft, they created bat bombs, attaching explosives to bats and releasing them over enemy territories. Krause's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Bats? As weapons?" "Yes, sir," Nova confirmed. "It was effective enough that they had to cancel the program due to its potential for collateral damage." "Remarkable," Krause murmured, his mind racing with the implications of such creativity. "But surely these were desperate measures?" "Not at all," Nova replied confidently. "These strategies showcase their resourcefulness under pressure. They have a history of turning even the most mundane objects into effective weapons, like using toilet plungers against battleships." Krause rubbed his temples as he processed this information. "This is absurd. How can a species so seemingly primitive possess such ingenuity?" "Because they think outside the box," Nova explained. "Every time they face a new threat or limitation, they find ways to overcome it by reimagining their approach to combat and technology." Krause leaned back in his chair, contemplating the enormity of what he was hearing. "So you're telling me that while we've been focused on traditional warfare strategies, these humans have been redefining what it means to fight?" "Precisely," Nova affirmed. "They don't just react to threats, they anticipate them and prepare accordingly. Their history is filled with examples of innovation born from necessity." Krause's scales shifted colors again as he considered the implications of this newfound understanding. "If we are to engage with them, whether in conflict or diplomacy, we must acknowledge their unpredictability." Nova nodded gravely. "Yes, Admiral. They are not merely a primitive species, they are a dynamic force capable of remarkable adaptation." As Krause absorbed this information, he felt a growing sense of urgency to reassess their approach toward Earth. The Elorian Empire had faced many challenges in its long history, but this was unlike anything they had encountered before, a species capable of imagining threats that didn't exist yet and building defenses against them. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Carter gathered his top advisors in the war room once more to discuss the latest developments regarding the alien threat. "Gentlemen," Carter began, his tone serious as he surveyed the room filled with military leaders and intelligence analysts. "We've received reports indicating that an advanced alien species is observing us closely, possibly preparing for an invasion." Colonel Hayes leaned forward intently. "Sir, do we have any idea what kind of technology they possess?" Our recent encounters suggest they may be far more advanced than we initially thought. Carter nodded solemnly. Indeed. We've detected advanced stealth ships and weaponry capable of disabling our aircraft with ease. He paused for effect before continuing. But we cannot let fear dictate our response. Instead, we must prepare ourselves for every possible scenario. Captain Rena chimed in from the back of the room, her voice steady and resolute. We need to leverage our own strengths. Our unpredictability and resourcefulness as humans can be our greatest asset in this situation. Carter turned to her with interest. What do you propose? We should implement a series of drills simulating various invasion scenarios, Rena suggested confidently. By preparing for different types of attacks and utilizing unconventional tactics, we can keep them guessing about our next move. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. And we should also consider using misinformation to confuse them, leading them to believe we're weaker than we actually are or that we have capabilities we don't possess. Carter smiled at this suggestion. It was classic human ingenuity at work, turning their weaknesses into strengths through deception and creativity. Agreed, he said firmly. Let's mobilize our resources and begin preparations immediately. As plans were laid out for increased military readiness and strategic drills designed to exploit human adaptability, Carter felt a renewed sense of determination wash over him. Back aboard Star Destroyer Supreme, Admiral Cross continued to grapple with the implications of what he had learned about humanity's unpredictable nature. Lieutenant Nova, he called out again as she prepared to leave the command center. Yes, Admiral, she replied. Compile all data regarding Earth's military history and potential strategies for countering their tactics, Cross commanded firmly. We will present this information at the next High Council meeting. Nova nodded quickly before returning to her console. As Cross watched her work diligently on compiling reports filled with human ingenuity and innovation, he couldn't shake off a feeling of unease that lingered deep within him. A realization that perhaps this encounter would not only test their military might but also challenge their understanding of warfare itself. In the days that followed, both sides prepared for what was shaping up to be an unprecedented encounter between two civilizations, one steeped in tradition and conquest and another defined by resilience and innovation. As tensions escalated across galaxies and whispers of war echoed through command centers on both sides, General Corrin and General Carter found themselves at the precipice of an inevitable clash, one that would determine not only their fates but also shape the course of history for generations to come. Next time we'll explore how both sides engage in unexpected encounters leading to revelations about each other's strengths and weaknesses as they navigate through misunderstandings toward potential diplomacy amidst rising tensions in space.